consumes the city. One man stands in the gap between good and evil. But we have no idea who he or she is, and this story is not about him or her. Instead, our 8 little homeschoolers just wish to get to graduation. Who are these 8 little homeschoolers who are about to face the world on their own? Let us meet them. There is Zane Futrell. He likes math. He likes money. And he likes to remind people each year that at the BAH Team Bash, after the votes are counted, that he was voted always.
I'm most likely to be rich.
And his friends shake their heads and agree. Then there is his quieter sidekick, Zach Futrell. He likes art, he likes music, and he particularly likes a small purplish flower called... I have no flower.
Oh yeah, the purple clover. It's right here.
And he searches for...
I don't know.
Purple clover. That's all you ever say?
Purple clover.
Thank you. Wherever he goes.
Those are pink. One line.
I know, well, and I understand it's purple, but at the last minute I couldn't find any clover, so we're going to pretend it's blue. All right, and then we have the other set of twins. First, Hayden Porter. He likes the color red. He likes fire trucks. And he loves volunteering at Crosby Fire where he saves lives, both the human kind and the furry small kind as well. And just before he leaps buildings in a single bound or rushes into burning buildings, his cry of
Crosby Fire!
can be heard throughout the galaxy. His look-alike sidekick is Holden Harry Styles.
I love the sidekick.
Holden is a great bat squatch hunter, and he alerts his friends to bat squatch sightings with the words,
"Look up, my friends, look up!"
The only young man in the group who is not a twin, but who is taller and larger than all the other twins combined, is Luke Peters. Luke is funny. Luke can do funny voices.
That's right.
Luke loves giving advice. His best advice to those leaving home?
Drive fast and take chances.
There you go.
Use road rage if you have to.
And now for the very young maidens who are soon-to-be graduates, or as we shall refer to all of them from now on, so I do not have to keep repeating soon-to-be graduates, STBGs. First, the fair-haired Caitlin Kevin Hyde. We don't know what name we're using today, so we'll use both. Caitlin is a hard worker. Caitlin loves jewelry. In fact, she is so busy looking at her jewelry, oftentimes all she can think to say is,
whatever.
Next is Shelby Pinkston. Shelby oftentimes throws long looks at Caitlin Kevin, for Shelby is more practical with her money. Shelby is also a hard worker. She loves selling you chicken. She also loves her Yorkie, and she can oftentimes be heard looking into her dog's eyes or her large purse where her dog lives and saying, "Oh my gosh, I love you, Toto!" And last but not least, we have Noelle, who never talks to Shanley. In fact, the STBGs were not sure for the longest if she could talk. Even now, she oftentimes looks at people, shakes her head, and smiles. And finally, graduation day was here for our graduates. They were excited. They were ready for the world, even if the world was not ready for them. Their lives could really not start until they graduated, and perhaps, just maybe, they were the one man or one woman who stood in the gap between good and evil, and then they could have their own story. But probably not. So our STBGs trudged down the road toward town. Their caps shaded their faces. Their gowns swayed in the wind. Their tassels tickled their noses. And they desperately needed a way to get to graduations faster. Their parents were waiting. They were going to be annoyed. They might refuse to graduate, but probably not. Finally, they came to an old school bus. It was a sea green color. It had large rounded flowers painted on the side, and it was funny looking. Noelle, who never talked Shanley, lifted her brows and pointed at the bus. Her meaning was clear. Let's ride this so we can get to graduation. Now, despite the funny bus, our SBTGs were desperate to be on their way. It was a hot May morning. They were sweaty and tired. They had a long way to go. They were excited. They were ready for the world, even if the world was not ready for them. Their lives could really not start until they had graduated. And perhaps, just maybe, they were the one man or one woman who stand in the gap between good and evil, and then they could have their own story. But probably not. And so Noelle, who never talks Shanley, boarded the bus. Zach spied a purple clover near the wheel. He plucked it up and held it against his chest with wonder, for he was certain one day he could use the
Purple clover.
for good. He then boarded the bus. Zane turned to the group, reminded them by saying,
I'm most likely to be rich.
and announced when he was so, he would never ride a funny bus again. He too boarded. Caitlin Kevin, not impressed by Zane's words, lifted her hand, flashed her newest ring, and said, whatever.
Whatever.
and boarded the bus. Shelby checked her bag to see her beloved dog was there. She said, and boarded the bus. Hayden, disappointed it was not a bright red fire truck, mumbled,
Crosby Fire!
would be better, and reluctantly climbed into the truck. Holden, whose best friend is Mario Andretti, stood and announced he would drive, for they were late and would be later still if they hurried not. But Luke said,
Drive fast and take chances. Use your road rage if you have to.
so Holden Harry Styles Porter flipped his hair from his face. He stepped his foot to the bus. A dark force moved across the sky. The world darkened. Holden cried,
My friends, look up!
and they all did. And all the STBGs screamed, Bat Squatch, now together, Bat Squatch is coming, Bat Squatch is coming. Bat Squatch is coming! Okay. So they jumped from the bus. They ran as fast as their legs would carry them. They knew neither promised riches, flashy rings, nor Toto dogs could save them. Finally, when the danger was past, they slowed. Their caps shaded their heads. Their gowns swayed in the wind. Their tassels tickled their noses. They simply had to find a faster way to get to graduation. They soon came to a dump truck. It was larger than the van. It was sturdier than the van. It was dirtier than the van. For the mound of dirt in its back fell and littered the ground near the wheels. Noelle, who never talks Shanley, frowned deeply. She sort of pointed at the truck. She sort of shrugged. Her meaning was sort of clear. We should drive this to graduation, perhaps. And the STBGs were desperate to get to graduation. After all, it was a hot May afternoon. They were sweaty and tired. They had a long way to go. But they were excited, for they were ready for the world, even if the world was not ready for them. So Shelby cried into her purse,
Oh my gosh, I love you, Toto!
and she climbed into the dump truck. Zane followed. He stood to the top of the mound. He cried, Someday I will own such a dump truck because...
I'm most likely to be rich.
Zach climbed into the dump truck, dropped to the ground, and cried.
I forgot my life. Watch out, Bill! What?
Purple clover.
Yeah, that one. I think I broke my...
He stood up and held up not one, but 2 purple clovers, and he stared at them with wonder, for he was certain one day he would use them for good. Hayden climbed into the cab of the truck, threw his fist in the air, and cried.
Crosby Fire!
Caitlin Kevin, not impressed again, cried.
Whatever.
And climbed to the mound of dirt, and one by one the other STBGs climbed into the dump truck and onto the mound of dirt alongside of her. And they waited, and waited. Their caps shaded their head. Their gowns swayed in the wind, their tassels tickled their noses. They checked their watches. They looked over the side of the truck. And then Noelle, who never talks, Shanley, pointed at each of them. She put her hands in front of her as if she were holding a steering wheel, and she steered. She pointed at the cab of the dump truck. She shrugged her shoulders. Her meaning was clear. One of them needed to drive. Finally, Holden, whose best friend is who? Mario Andretti, stood and announced that he would drive, for they were late and would be later still if they hurried not. So Luke cried,
Drive fast and take chances. Use your road rage if you have to.
Holden jumped to the ground. He stepped to the cab. The world darkened. Wings flapped and wind rushed over him. Holden cried.
Look up, my friends, look up!
And the STBGs cried, Bat Squatch is coming! The STBGs scrambled out of the dump truck. They ran as fast as their legs would carry them. They knew neither promised riches, flashy rings, nor Toto dogs could save them. Finally, when the danger was past, they slowed. They simply had to find a faster way to get to graduation. It wasn't too long before they came to a fire truck. It was red. It was big. And it was a fire truck. Hayden cried,
Crosby Fire!
and he cared not that his brother had been taught to drive by Mario Andretti, for Hayden was.
Crosby Fire!
And he alone had the power to drive the red truck that would save them all. After all, the SPGs were desperate to be saved and to get to graduation. It was turning into a late, balmy May afternoon. They were sweaty and tired. Their gowns were sticking to them. Their caps were droopy, and they had a long way to go. And they were excited, for they were ready for the world, even if the world was not ready for them. Noelle, who never talked Shanley, stared at the truck. She shrugged her shoulders. She gave Hayden the evil eye. Her meaning was clear. She had no wish to ride the truck. It was too big, it was too bright, and she knew it would be too loud. But Hayden said,
Crosby
me fire!
It's fast. He assured her they could get to graduation, and so she climbed into the truck. Caitlin Kevin, not impressed with Hayden's heroics, cried
Whatever.
and climbed into the truck. She set to polishing her ring, which now was quite dirty after escape from the dump truck. Shelby cried,
Oh my gosh, I love you, Toto!
and she climbed into the truck. Zach stood up from a nearby patch of grass. He held up another purple board. He held it to his chest with the other two. He said 3 times,
Purple clover, purple clover, purple clover.
Zane shook his head at his brother. Why do you collect such things, he asked. For someday I will be able to buy you all the purple clover in the world because...
I most likely be rich.
But Zach ignored his brother and held the purple clovers to his heart, for he knew someday he could use them for good. And Holden Harry Styles Porter, who had been tending his hair after all, it had been a hectic day and his gel was getting sticky, set his foot to the truck. Hayden honked his horn. Luke, in the cab with Hayden, screamed,
Drive fast and take chances. Use your road rage if you have to.
but before Holden got on the truck, the world darkened. Wings flapped and wind rushed over him. He brushed his hair from his face and cried.
Look up, my friends, look up!
And the STBGs cried.
Bat Squatch is coming! Bat Squatch is coming!
And Bat Squatch, having lost his prey 2 times before, flapped harder and flew faster than ever before. And Shelby cried.
Oh my gosh, I love you, Toto!
Hayden cried.
Cross me fire!
Well, take care of it. Zane shook his fist in the darkness and cried, I will own you someday because...
I most likely be rich.
Caitlin Kevin lifted her finger and screamed.
Whatever.
Noel, who never talked Shanley, said not a word but stared at the darkness. And Luke screamed.
Drive fast and take chances. Use your road rage if you have to.
But Zach Futrell stood on the top of the truck. He lifted up his flowers and cried 3 times.
Purple clover! Purple clover! Purple clover!
He blew on them and the small purple needles blew into Bat Squatch's face. They stung his eyes. They tickled his nose. And then he sneezed. 'Twas ugly. 'Twas raw. 'Twas fiery and hot. It shot against the back of the fire truck. It pushed it forward. Hayden held onto the wheel and cried.
Cross me fire!
Shelby held her dog and screamed.
Oh my gosh, I love you, Toto!
Noel, who never talked Shanley, said nothing. Caitlin Kevin cried.
Whatever.
And soon the STVGs pulled into the parking lot. They jumped from the fire truck. They raced into the building. The hour was turning late. They were sweaty and tired. Their gowns were sticking to them. Their caps were drooping. But they had made it to graduation. They were excited. They were ready for the world, even if the world was not ready for them. Their lives could really not start until they graduated.